Hi, welcome to episode 494 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Twitter, Instagram, and over on Blue Sky. I blog at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where every episode show notes will be. And I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarns and knitting patterns. Hi, how are you? I hope that you are doing well. It is Monday, October 28th. October is almost over. And it is a beautiful fall day here in Kansas City. It's in the 50s and 60s, and the trees are absolutely beautiful this week. I always wait for the 1 week a year where the fall foliage is absolutely gorgeous here before the trees lose all of their leaves. We have a mulberry tree at the end of our driveway that is bright yellow and absolutely gorgeous, and just driving around is such a pleasure. We went out a few times this weekend to run errands, and it was just absolutely beautiful. This weekend was pretty quiet for us, which was nice. I got to do some crafting. I'm nearing the end on some projects. I had hoped to have a few more things finished, but not quite, so it'll be one more week. But I did get some crafty things done. We went out and did a 5K this weekend. I guess I'm a sucker for punishment. We went and did the Monster Dash on Saturday, which was kind of fun. People showed up in costumes, and it was a very family-friendly race. And we ran well. Certainly not record-breaking times, but we did better than the previous weekend. So it was a good day, and honestly, we've just been hanging out. Upcoming this weekend, we're going to, my husband's family does a potluck Thanksgiving the first Saturday in November, so we'll go to that. And I'm going to be the weird one and bring a salad. Everyone's been kind of pitching in the dishes that they're bringing, and we have like lots and lots of potatoes and lots of desserts. So the main folks who put it on do turkey and ham. And then they ask everyone to bring either side dishes or desserts. And everyone has said they're bringing some form of potatoes or stuffing, and then everybody's bringing dessert. And so Wes was like, shouldn't we bring like some kind of vegetables? And at first I thought I'd bring a vegetable platter, but it turns out we're just going to make a big salad. So that should be fun. They ordered a bounce house for the kids. My mother-in-law this is my mother-in-law's side of the family, and my mother-in-law is one of 8. So there are lots and lots and lots of kids and grandkids and great-grandkids even, and so it should be kind of a fun time. So, and I'll have a little bit of driving time on the way there and back, so I'll have some time to knit. So it has been a pretty crafty couple weeks. Let me talk to you about the tea, and then we'll get into the crafts. So I am using my Hello Kitty Trick or Treat mug for the last time this year. This is my Halloween Hello Kitty mug. I could probably use it next week, but this will be the last week that I'll probably use it because Halloween is coming up on Thursday. But it is my favorite fall mug, and today I am drinking tea that I got from a semi-local store. It is located in Lawrence, which is just outside of Kansas City. It's about 30-40 minutes outside. It's where Kansas University is, and they have this. It's really cool. It's a college town, and it's just got like a really funky main street that has all kinds of wonderful things. They've got a big yarn store, they've got a big fabric store, they've got a stationery store, and among other things, they have a Brits store. And in the Brits store, it is everything British. So if you are craving Tim Tams or other British snacks or tea or a variety of British themed merchandise, that is what you will find in this store. And I forgot we went over there, gosh, it's probably already been a year, but I forgot that I bought some Orange Blossom Oolong, and so I decided to pull that out today. I had been looking for something pumpkin, and I don't have anything pumpkin in my stash anymore. Must have either finished it or tossed it based on freshness, so I might have to order something else pumpkin, but for today we're going to do Orange Blossom Oolong in my Hello Kitty mug. So that is what I'm working on in terms of tea, and I've been drinking lots of tea and coffee for the last week because it's definitely cooler, and so I drink it to warm up. So I have a few knitting things plus a looking forward project. I have an ever so tiny bit of spinning, and then I have a little bit of sewing. So let's talk about it in that order. So I had hoped to have my mom's sweater finished, and it didn't quite happen. I made lots of good progress this week, and I am about 40 rows from the end of the sleeve. I've got about 20 more regular stockinette rows and then 20 cuff rows, and so I am hoping to maybe finish this later today or this evening. We'll have to see how my afternoon goes at work, but it is looking like a pretty good second sleeve, and like I said, I have about 20 more rows of the regular stockinette, and then I have the cuff. And I don't know whether I'll show this to you again. I mean, I'll certainly have it. Basically, it is my mom's sweater, which is Joji Locatelli's Night Out cardigan. It is a top-down raglan with simple shaping, and then it's got this really nice lace panel at the center. I have talked about this on the last probably every podcast in October. So, and I talked about it when I made it, which was in 2022. If you look up on the website Night Out Cardigan, you'll find a list of all the episodes where I talked about it. Anyway, so that is the cardigan, and basically my mom gave it back to me and asked for some modifications because the sleeves were too large in circumference and too long. And so I ripped and reknit the first sleeve. The thing that was nice about her request is that it was a top-down raglan pattern, so all I had to do was rip back to the top of the sleeve and then reknit the sleeve. And because she wanted sleeves that were smaller in circumference and shorter in length, I didn't have to find the leftover yarn. I just ripped back and then reknit in the existing yarn, and I ended up with a little ball of leftovers by the time I was done. So I knit the first sleeve, and then I have knit most of the second sleeve, and like I said, I'm about 20 rows away from getting to the cuff, and then another 20 rows for the cuff, and then I am done. So hopefully that is going to be, it's covered in threads, because now not only do I have ends of yarn around my house, but I have little threads from all the sewing that I have been doing. So yes, so that is what I am working on, and my hope is that I will finish this evening. Then I will just wash and reblock the sleeves. The sweater itself is so nicely blocked, and then you get to the sleeves where I reknit it with ramen, and you can see it's all like Anyway, I will reblock the sleeves. It will be no problem. And then the sweater will be ready to return to my mom, and I will return it to her when we go out there for the Thanksgiving holiday. So I am excited about it. I am also excited to finish it. I am happy to have repaired it for her, or not repaired, but happy to have fixed it so that hopefully she will enjoy wearing it more, because I do think that you should enjoy wearing your sweater should be properly fitting, because you will enjoy wearing them more, and that is the point. But it's been a little boring, so I can't say that I'm sorry to see this project go. So that is the first project. The second project, I got a little bit further along and got to a point I'm happy with. I finished the first of Miles' socks. So Miles is my nephew, and every year I knit my niece and nephew on my sister's kids. I knit them usually some winter gear. This year I'm only knitting them socks because I have cut back on my knitting this year a little bit due to tendonitis, and but I finished his first sock. So this is yarn from Knit Pick. It is Hawthorne hand-dyed, and it is a 80%, let me think about this, 80% superwash Highland wool, 20% polyamide, which gives it a little bit of nylon for strength. And what I did is I did a 2x2 cuff, and 2x2 ribbing, and then I did the cuff, and I did a slip stitch heel flap with gusset, and then I went down and did the toe. And my sister actually hasn't sent me drawings of the kids' feet. Usually what I have her do is trace the kids' feet, and then I can measure them and knit their socks appropriately. But I went ahead and looked up on Craft Yarn Council the suggested lengths for boys of a certain age, their foot sizes. So if you are not familiar, Craft Yarn Council produces schematics for mostly for the use of designers for figuring out like what sizes you want to make things. And I will say that there has been plenty of controversy in recent years over sort of adult garment sizing, and the fact that garment sizing is not kind of it's not a standard ratio, particularly as you get to the larger sizes. So as more size inclusivity has become the goal, the Craft Yarn Council isn't perfect on their standards for exactly what measurements should be on garments. However, they do publish kind of sizing guides and rough measurements for lots and lots of things, including children's garments and, you know, socks and hands and those kinds of things. And in the absence of having the person with you or having a tracing of the person's hand or foot, usually I find that they are somewhat useful to give me an idea of like foot length and foot circumference. So what I did is I just took his age range. I think he falls into the 7 to 9 age range now, and I looked at the rough estimate of the length in inches, and then what I did is I planned for a sock that was going to be about 1/2 to 3/4 inch shorter than that, because you want your socks to be a little bit snug. Also, they will stretch out with wear. So that is how I calculated that, and I finished the first one. I had aimed to kind of have the second one cast on at least through the cuff. Did not get get there, but that is what I plan to work on this week. I'm hoping I can finish my mom's cuff tonight, and then I'm hoping that I can finish Miles' second sock this week and be done with this pair, and then I need to move on to his sister's socks. So my real goal is to finish my mom's sweater and Miles' socks by October 31st, which is Thursday. I might be able to do it. I might not quite finish the second sock, but if I can get started on Roxy socks this weekend, then I should be fine. So that is the half finished of what I have. So I haven't brought any other knitting to show you. I think I probably did put in a few rows on my clapetee this week, but not enough to make a difference. The one thing that I did bring you is I brought some yarn, because by the next time we meet, it will be NaKniSweMo. And I can't remember how much I have talked about this or not talked about this year. NaKniSweMo has been going on, I believe I first started participating in 2009 or 2010. It was the brainchild of Shannon Oakey, who is the creative force behind Cooperative Press, and she decided that because writers get National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, in November, it would be fun to set a similar challenge for knitters, which is NaKniSweMo, National Knit a Sweater Month. National Novel Writing Month, the goal is to get your novel down, write 50,000 words in the month of November, and so Shannon translated that to knit a sweater that is at least 50,000 stitches in the month of November. So that is kind of the goal and the spirit. In the early years, we had lots and lots of prizes for participation, and so the goal was to cast on November 1st and cast off by November 30th and have a finished sweater that was 50,000 stitches. Like I said, we had lots of prizes in the early years. Prizes have dwindled off more or less over time, so I will paint it like this. The goal is to knit a sweater in the month. If you want to be eligible for prizes, in the event that there are prizes, because we basically rely on donations for prizes, I'm a moderator in the group, which is why I talk about it like I do. If there are prizes, and that is if people donate prizes, in order to be eligible for prizes, you must cast on November 1st and cast off by November 30th and work a sweater that is 50,000 stitches. That is kind of the letter of the law. Whips are not allowed. Knitting and crocheting is allowed, so it could be crocheting 50,000 stitches. If you would like to just join in the group and try and knit a sweater in November, you can join the group and participate regardless of when you cast on, when you cast off, or how many stitches it is. So if you have a work in progress that you would like to finish, come join us and finish your sweater in the month of November. If you have baby sweaters to knit, if this is your first sweater and you'd like to try it in a smaller size or a child size, if you find a sweater that is knit in bulky yarn and there's no way that it's going to be 50,000 stitches, all are welcome to come and knit sweaters with us. And honestly, the true prize at the end of the month is that you have a sweater. I know that sounds corny, but the true prize is that at the end of November, if you finish your sweater in November, you are ready to go for winter with a brand new sweater. So please come and join us. It is the NaKniSweMo group on Ravelry. You can also tag your posts with NaKniSweMo on Instagram. I follow those tags. And this is not something that I personally run in my group. This is a group on Ravelry of which I am a moderator, and so I talk about it and I participate every year. I have participated every year. Not every year do I knit a sweater for myself. Sometimes I have knit gift sweaters or I have knit sample sweaters. I have finished sweaters in all but, well, okay. 1 year I finished my sweater, I put it on and I hated it, so I immediately ripped it. And in a couple years, I haven't quite made the deadline. I have missed by a couple days. I will tell you right now, I have no intention of meeting this year's deadline. With my tendonitis and the way I've been knitting this year, there is no way that I will be knitting a whole sweater in a month. That's just not going to happen. Also because I have other things that I want to do. I need to get Roxy's socks done, etc. I am, however, going to cast on in the spirit. My sweater will be 50,000 stitches. There's just no way that it will be finished in November. So that by the time I see you next, it will already be into November. I am hoping to start casting on for my sweater on Friday, and I am going to be repeat knitting something that I knit as a sample and always wanted to make one for myself. So several years ago for Zen Yarn Garden, I knit an Excuse Me sweater, which is by Stephen West, and it is a brioche sweater, and it was meant to be knit in kind of all kinds of mishmash of leftovers, and so the results on his on the page are very kind of funky and out there and in a variety of colors. But the one that I knit for Zen Yarn Garden basically was knit in 2 colors. It had kind of a foreground color because it's 2-color brioche, so it's color dominant, and it had a foreground color and then a background color. And the background color ended up being black, and the foreground color ended up being somewhat variegated. And it was beautiful, and I knit it, and at the time that I knit that sweater, they really just wanted it to be a sweater, but I realized that I could have kept going another 6 to 10 inches, and that it would have been a really cute kind of tunic length, not quite dress, but close to dress over leggings. And I always decided that one day I wanted to go back and do it for myself. And when Zen Yarn Garden announced they were going out of business, which is almost a year ago now, they are still kind of selling a few things, but they're really winding down at this point. They've gotten rid of most of their stock, and they're towards the end. They announced, I can't remember if it was last December or January, but right around then, that they were going to be closing the business. And I immediately thought, oh, I want to get yarn for to make one for myself. So I had really loved the black and then the variegated, but they didn't have any black, and they had used a specific yarn, which is called their Nightshades yarn. And they call it Nightshades because it has one strand of black throughout, so it looks very Barbara Poli, and the strand of black doesn't take color, but the other strands take color. And so what I found was I found their Nightshade yarn in this deep dark royal purple, and this is a mostly solid color. I mean, I guess it's technically semi-solid, but because it's probably kettle dyed, but it's purple. And then I found this really cool multi-skein with all kinds of rainbow. So this is going to be the foreground, this is going to be the background, and this is going to be my sweater. It is going to be kind of dark and moody with pops of light, and I am very excited, and I have enough of both to definitely make a dress. And so this is what I'm going to be knitting for my Excuse Me sweater. So this is worsted weight yarn. I believe each skein is either 180 or 200 yards. And I have 6 of each color. I bought them on clearance when they were clearancing out the Nightshade yarn, and I just decided that I want a cozy, squishy brioche sweater slash tunic slash dress, and I am just going to knit until it's the length I want or I run out of yarn. So by the time I see you next, these will be wound. I will have cast on. My hope is that I can work through the neck. It's basically like a turtleneck up top, and so my hope is that I can work through that neck piece. I can't remember how long it is, but it's like a cowl neck. And so my hope is that maybe I can work through the cowl in the car this weekend, and so I will have something to show you, but I didn't want to just show it to you next time. I wanted to show it to you today and let you see what I'm going to be working on. I think that's best for color. So that is the next thing that's on my needles. I am super excited to cast on something new. I have really been trying to like finish up things that I have on the needles. I still have a few things on the needles for myself that I may try and finish up before the end of the year, but I want to cast on something new, and I knit so little these days for myself that I really just kind of want to knit something pleasurable for myself and hopefully work on that into the holidays. So that is what's upcoming. The only other thing you might see next week is if I can manage to finish Miles' socks before the weekend. I might try and start Roxy's socks this weekend, and I am knitting hers. I showed you this last week. This is a skein of 3 Irish girls in Adorn sock, and so I definitely have kind of a moody with little pops of light colorway thing going on right now. So I might wind that up and cast that on, but that's the only other thing I intend to cast on. Before the end of the year, probably, I might cast on some Christmas Eve socks, because I always do that. But I think other than that, I'm going to try and work on my clapetee. I still have a top tee that I was working on. I was working on the Joji Locatelli hipster tee, and then I have a pair of socks that are works in progress, and I would love to finish those before the end of the year and have a new pair of socks for myself. So those are kind of the things that I'm working on, and it might be a little boring in the next couple months, but hopefully I will have more to show you next week because I'll have some new projects that I'm working on. Just a tiny bit of spinning news. This is my first finished bobbin since Tour de Fleece in July. It has been a hard one because spinning is what I had been healing from tendonitis, and spinning is kind of what threw me off again. And this was the next braid I had picked out to spin. This is called Nymph, and it is, you can't really see, but there is some actual like red and orange in there as well. It's a little bit of red and russet orange, brown, and then kind of a burgundy pink and gray. It is on 23 micron gray merino, which means that the merino itself is mixed, which is why it takes the colors darker. So like the gray is the natural color. I don't think that's dyed. I think the dye is the pink and red and brown on there. And I have 4 ounces of this. This is 2 ounces, and I've started to spin the other 2 ounces. I'm spinning in short 15-minute increments. I have no idea how long it will take me to get there. Like I said, this bobbin is hard won, but it is a half-finished set of singles, and I am working at getting back into spinning. I'm not spending as much time at it as I am spending it knitting. You know, if I have to make choices, I'm 100% going to spend my time knitting over spinning. I don't know what that means for the future of my shop. At least right now, it means it's kind of on hiatus because I'm not adding a lot of new stuff. I still have tons and tons and tons of fiber in my stash. I have not bought much in the way of fiber because I have so much in my stash, but I am just going to kind of keep working it, and we'll see how things go. And hopefully, I realize that my totals are not going to be very impressive for 2024, but I'm hoping that 2025 will bring a little bit more productivity and a little bit more. So the final thing that I wanted to talk about was a quilt and some lessons that I learned quilting this weekend. So I wanted to work on another quilt, and I wasn't precisely sure what I wanted to do. So I decided to pull some fabric from my stash that I bought when I was shopping in Iowa a few weeks ago, and I showed you this fabric, I think last week or the week before. It was 3 yards that had been kind of prepackaged together, and 2 of them are from the same fabric line, and then 1 is kind of a coordinating solid, and it was really adorable, and it's kind of baby fabric, and so I thought, why not make a baby quilt? And so I had some ideas on how I wanted to make this quilt. I decided that I wanted to make it just in strips. So not jelly roll strips, I had the full yards. I wanted to make it in strips. And the lesson that I learned this weekend is kind of, particularly when you're not using a pattern, work on your quilt kind of in order, and don't try and cut all the fabric at the beginning because you may not realize what you're doing. So I decided to make, like I said, a quilt that was in strips. And I purchased a directional fabric, and directional fabric means kind of what it says, which is the design only goes in one direction. So it has like a right side up and a upside down. So like if you flip the pattern, it looks like it's upside down. So I will illustrate what I mean here. So the fabric that I loved in this was the jungle fabric, and the jungle fabric has all kinds of animals, but as you can see, they are all facing right side up. So if I were to make the quilt with the fabric going the other way, they would be upside down, and that would kind of look wrong. That's not to say you can't do it, but that's what I mean when I say directional fabric. Like, it definitely has a right direction, versus this yellow, or this blue and yellow one that has hearts that go in all directions, and I could put it in the quilt in any way, shape, or form, and you would not think it was like upside down. Versus if I show you this fabric upside down, you're going to be like, why is the fabric upside down? Okay, so one of the things about, another thing about fabric. So fabric comes on bolts, and generally what the fabric is the part that's wrapped around the bolt is generally 44 inches wide, and then you can have it cut in yards. And so I had a yard of fabric, and what I thought that meant was that the fabric went this way, and I had 44 inches tall, and I had 36 inches wide. And so when I was thinking about making the quilt, I was like, the maximum width that I can get on there is 36 inches, and I would really like my quilt to be closer to 40 or 42 inches. So what I can do is I can cut my strips in 36 inches, and I can sew them together, and I will end up with something that is 36 inches wide, and then I can put borders on it. What I did not realize was that the fabric was printed directionally on the bolt this way. So what I actually have is I have 44 inches of fabric. And so what I did first when I stopped was I went ahead and cut fabric for my border pieces. I don't need borders because the fabric is 44 inches wide now. So I cut a bunch of extra fabric pieces that I did not need. That's what I mean when I say work through things step by step and plan. I thought I was doing the right thing by cutting the border fabric because I thought that was going to make my life easier. And basically what happened, okay, so let me share this in a little bit more detail. The fabrics that I bought in a package of 3 were these 3 fabrics. These 2 are called Into the Jungle, and they are by, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Makower, Makower, UK. It is a UK fabric company, and I don't know how old this fabric line is. Like I said, it was like 3 1-yard cuts packaged and put away. I have found some cuts of this like on Etsy and in a few places, but it is not a current fabric line. I guess I should talk about the fact that this is a lot of explanatory commas, and for those of you who quilt, I know this is really, this is common knowledge, but for those of you who don't quilt, here's what I've learned. Fabric comes in, for the most part, seasons. And so people will make fabric collections, they will debut for the season, and they make so much of the fabric, and when the fabric is all sold out, it's gone. It doesn't come back. It's not, it's more like limited edition yarn batches than it is like Cascade 220 where you can always get it. There are fabrics that are like Cascade 220, for instance, Kona Cotton, or a lot of companies have solid lines, or they have basics in certain patterns or whatnot that they will repeat, and that is sort of your workhorse stuff that you can always get in the same colorway and whatever. But just as we try, and when you buy from indies, you try and buy enough in the same dye lot so that you can finish the sweater, you should always try and buy enough fabric, because the possibility that if you don't get to the fabric for a while, there will be no more and you won't be able to finish if you run out, is there. Okay. These 3 were put together in 1-yard cuts. Like I said, these 2 are from the same fabric line, and then the yellow is just a solid from, I think, Wyndham that was matched with the other 2, and they went together really well. And so what I have put together is almost the entire quilt top. And so I'm going to stand up and show you. So this is what I have so far. So I have a really big chunk of the jungle fabric in the middle because that was my favorite. And then I added some stripes. And so what I have is a 44-inch wide and approximately 40-inch long top. And I think I'm going to be able to salvage some of what I cut for the border, because I think actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a strip to the top and the bottom of this border fabric. So I think I'm going to add this kind of right there, 1 to the top, 1 to the bottom, and so I will salvage a little bit of that. But then I won't need stuff on the side, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And then I will use, well, okay, so I bought these 3 yards together, and I used a good chunk of these 3 yards, a good chunk of this one, and almost all of this one. I still have plenty of the yellow left, but all of those I used in the quilt top. Then what I did is I went to the sale bin, which was right next to where this was, and I found 2 other fabrics that I thought would go nicely, and that was these 2. And so my thought was, here's where my thought goes. My thought was that I could do borders in this one and binding in this one, and then I could use whatever was left over for the backing. So what I did is I cut my border strips first, and then I cut my binding strips out of this one, and then I had these 2 left, and what I did was I cut this one in half, and so my plan is to sew these together like this for the backing. Now, of course, there will be tons of this in here because there is tons of this in here. So this is going to be the back of the quilt, and then it's a little bit plainer and just a little bit whatnot. And then, like I said, I'm going to put those 2 sashes on the top, and then the binding, you will see, will look kind of like this. Hang on, I'm just going to hold this up so you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So that will be the binding on it, which I think will be really nice. It'll frame it nicely. I also thought about whether or not I could use the yellow as binding, and I am actually possibly even a little more partial to the yellow, but I already cut the strips for this, and I don't want to waste the fabric. So, lesson number 1 when you are quilting, also when you're not exactly sure what you're doing with your quilting, like you're just kind of cutting strips and sewing them together, and you know you will get it to a length, and you haven't looked at all your fabric and looked at the way it's all laid out, which was number 1. Look at all your fabric, look at the way it's laid out. Number 2, work on your top, and then think about what you want to do for your borders and binding, and only cut them in advance if you're making a quilt pattern and the pattern tells you to do it in that order. Otherwise, think about it, because I will say that for a little while I was convinced that I had really wasted most of this fabric, and luckily it was very low stakes because this is just things that I bought from the scrap bin for a baby quilt that I'm making for a, I don't have any babies that I know of being born. This is just a baby quilt. I will either keep it for when I need a baby quilt, or I will donate it at some point. And so this is very low stakes to have cut into fabric without having the plan finalized. So that is what I am working on. I expect that I will not have any more progress before I see you next week, because we will be traveling a little bit this weekend, and so I probably will not have time to sit down at my sewing machine. So that is what's in progress, and I hope to be able to show you more. My guess is it'll take one more session for me to kind of finish the top and sew the pieces for the backing together, and then it'll probably take me several sessions to quilt it. I bought some yellow thread. I'm not sure whether I'm going to use yellow thread or white for this, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. Originally, I was going to kind of outline each of the stripes as a box, but I realized that I wouldn't necessarily like that with the way the back of the quilt is going to be, because the backing is going to be pieced as well, and so I just haven't decided precisely what I'm going to do yet. So, but that will be kind of a fun, and it's a gender neutral baby quilt, because it's got a little bit of pink in the flowers and the pink flamingos, but otherwise it's blues and yellows and teals, and so I think it will be really nice, and I will just hang on to it until I figure out where it needs to go. It will either go to a baby that will show up in my life, or it will get donated to a good cause. So I think that's all I have for you this week. I'm getting excited about NaKniSweMo. I'm very excited to cast something on, and I'm excited by my quilting adventures. And hopefully I didn't mess this up too much. I think I'm just going to have a few strips of fabric that I cut that I can't use, in which case I'll just save them in the scrap bin, and hopefully I'll be able to use them for something else at some point in the not too distant future. So I hope that you have a lovely week ahead. If you are in the United States, please, 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 please go out and vote. We have a very important election coming up, and your vote should be counted. So please get yourself out there and vote. I did that this week. I was lucky enough to have early voting in my county, and so I am done, and I'm ready for the political ads and all of the nonsense to stop, but I am waiting on tenterhooks to see what comes out of it. I try not to make this a political podcast, but please, please, please go vote. Your vote counts. So have a wonderful week ahead, and I will talk to you again soon, hopefully with a few new projects, which will be nice, because I know this month has been a little boring. And I will say happy crafting, happy knitting, crocheting, quilting, spinning, happy embroidering, happy spinning, and above all, happy sipping. And I'll see you next time. Bye.